Welcome to Manhwa Nirwana. Let's dive straight into the story. On a quiet night, a huge tower appeared in the darkness, accompanied by a faint, mysterious sound echoing through the air. Is there a restrained person, suffering and gasping in pain, as another voice threatened him not to lose consciousness now? When injected with a powerful stimulant, the man let out a loud scream of agony. Someone was observing the experiment, commenting that the stimulant had lasted for 461 seconds this time, and that it took longer than before. A restrained individual was considered an exceptional talent for experiments, from the observer's point of view. The mages discussed the results among themselves and decided to try a new stimulant to increase this person's abilities, as he had managed to suppress the response of the monocercate in his body after the second injection. A man who seemed to be of great importance entered the magic tower, known as the strongest tower in the empire. As a result, the restrained young man began to feel like he was dying slowly, blood flowing from his body. He questioned in his mind the reason that brought him to such a miserable state. He kept wondering why he ended up like this despite his intelligence and talent. At that moment, a small insect appeared crawling on a wall. Suddenly, the young man was injected again with power, causing him immense suffering. He pleaded desperately for them to stop the pain, but ignored his cries. The tower's master mage was annoyed by his screaming, and ordered to be notified after the experiment was over before leaving the place. The young man continued to wonder and despair why he was dying in the place he had dreamed of being in. He felt heartbroken when he looked around at the magic surrounding him in the tower he had dreamed of. He was subjected to violence and beatings by someone who mocked him harshly. This person mocked Verdun, calling him talentless and claiming he had no magic at all, despite the intelligence everyone praised him for. He sarcastically told him that his life was being drained in a secret laboratory. He kept provoking Verdun, demanding that he speak with the same arrogance he once had. The small insect continued observing the painful scene as the mage continued mocking Verdun, saying he couldn't even faint. The mage noticed that young Verdun was not focusing on him at all. He became annoyed by Verdun's distraction and angrily asked where he was looking. He suddenly discovered that the experimental insects had escaped and spread across the place. The mage became furious with his help, scolding them harshly for their failure, and crushed the ant under his foot. One of the mages mocked Verdun, describing him as nothing more than a useful insect, because he had no magic and couldn't even use any magic to break his restraints. Another replied that thanks to him, they had been able to conduct an S-class experiment and extract its elements. Verdun asked once again in sorrow, why is this happening? As they mocked his friend, the cruel mockery continued as they expressed pity toward Reflin for being friends with such a person. The insect was seen lying on the ground, dying, as Verdun asked again why this happened to him. He smiled bitterly and painfully when he realized something in that harsh moment. Verdun started to speak in a low, angry voice while the mage mocked him, asking what he was muttering about. Verdun exploded, shouting at them furiously, demanding that they be silent. Is everything happening to him because of his weakness? He began to recall how his suffering started 15 years ago when he was raised in an orphanage because he had no parents and eventually ended up at the magic tower as an ordinary worker. He had no parents. He explained that no matter how much effort he put in, he couldn't become a mage because of his limited growth. That sentence passed on him when he was 7 years old after he underwent the mage assessment test and was deemed talentless, a devastating blow for someone whose only goal was to become a mage. Despite everything, he never gave up on his dream and secretly worked in the tower trying to learn from spellbooks. In the tower library, he read extensively and learned confident in his intelligence despite his weak magic. Years passed and he was eventually recognized as a genius and finally earned the position of a researcher in the tower. Everyone praised his intelligence and amazement, and he himself discovered the truth of his intellect. He felt joy when Lockhart praised him after Verdun presented his research to him. Verdun assured Lockhart he had not shown the research to anyone else. The young man felt happy because Lockhart acknowledged his abilities and he hoped to be an official researcher. He was shocked when he realized Lockhart had stolen his research and claimed it was his own. Verdun tried desperately to convince the tower's head that his stolen research was his. He explained how his research had disappeared the day before submission and how Lockhart claimed it. The tower head expressed his surprise, asking if Verdun was the one behind the theory of multidimensional communication. The young man begged the tower master to explain everything from the start. Why was the tower head surprised that such talent existed among the regular researchers? Verdun later regretted going to the tower head that day, particularly when the tower master in a frightening tone told him to come to his lab in 2 days when the moon would be obscured. Had Verdun escaped the tower back then, he wondered if he could have lived a normal life. For that was when his difficult life began, a worker by job and an experimental subject by night. He was forced to create a magic circle and test his own theory, risking his life in the process. Even when he tried to reveal the truth, he was threatened that the tower would kill the people he cared about. It was then that Verdun hopelessly realized everything was over. He lay in a dark cell wondering what his next step would be. And then his mind began to replay memories as he heard voices calling to him from afar. A memory from the past appeared. He was running joyfully with his friend, Roflin. He wondered in confusion whether these memories were truly fragments of his childhood returning to him now. Verdun recalled memories from the past when he and his friend, Roflin, had promised each other to become great mages together. Verdun had warmly agreed to that promise as they sealed it with their pinky fingers. He thought with regret that if his potential for growth had been just a little better, things might have turned out differently. Verdun smiled in his memories, wondering if he could have changed anything had the circumstance has been different. But his smile quickly faded as he returned to reality, quietly admitting to himself that everything was over now. He confirmed within himself with a sense of despair that it truly was over. In his dark cell, the disturbing sound echoed once again around Verdun. That same sound he always heard during the experiments made him feel as though he no longer had the strength to resist. Then he heard a strange voice telling him that things were not over yet, despite his desire to die. Verdun realized the voice was right, things were not over yet. A dark entity appeared to him, telling him that he had to survive for the sake of vengeance and survival. The entity asked him to endure the pain no matter how intense it was. It promised him that he would be reborn, possessing power that would ensure he was never humiliated again. The dark voice told him he would surpass his current limits. Verdun regained his resolve and decided not to give in. He looked up at the glowing moon and repeated to himself that it wasn't over yet. He was determined to complete the plan he had spent 7 years preparing for revenge. Only one final problem remained that he had to solve. Verdun realized that intelligence alone wasn't enough to face overwhelming power. And so he decided to challenge his fate and rebuild his theory to reconstruct his body anew. He named it the Sky Challenging Theory and officially declared its beginning. He staked everything on it, affirming that by tomorrow he would surpass his limits. He was determined to break through his limits completely no matter the outcome. He decided to accept death if that was the price of completing his theory and reconstructing his body. He realized that all that was left now was to prove the success of his theory through practice. He decided to use an ancient artifact that would allow him to use magic just once, even if it meant his body would shatter during the experiment. He was resolute in reclaiming his freedom no matter the cost on the evening of the next day. The long night passed and the data execute his plan finally began. The cell door opened with a humiliating voice ordering him to clean the alchemy lab. Verdun appeared standing before another mage who mocked him and told him not to slack off, especially with the festival approaching. He shouted in his face, angrily demanding an answer. Verdun replied calmly and in a low voice, then silently walked away. He went alone to clean the lab. Verdun turned in surprise when he heard a voice asking if he was cleaning alone. Roflin suddenly appeared in front of him smiling. Verdun asked her why she came and she replied that she came to say goodbye before her departure. Verdun remembered that Roflin was going to study in the magical city of Verenti, a privilege granted only to exceptional talents. He calmly congratulated her and wished her luck, though she seemed hesitant. Roflin extended her hand and told him that her offer still stood. He could come with her to Verenti. She tried to convince him that the new place would open greater opportunities for him, but he remained silent and hesitant. Roflin felt embarrassed and tense, trying to justify her request by saying she just wanted someone to talk to. But Verdun gently apologized and told her he would stay where he was. Roflin looked sad and disappointed by his decision. Before she left, she told him she would send him letters. Verdun felt sorrow as he watched her leave, thinking to himself that she had no idea what he was going through. He thought bitterly that she knew nothing of the suffering he endured. Despite all that, he felt relieved that she wouldn't get involved in his plan. He was at least grateful for that. The magical festival began in the tower, during which the high-ranking mages left, and only the lower-ranking ones remained. Verdun moved quietly through the tower, taking advantage of everyone being distracted by the festival. He knocked on the treasure room door, identifying himself. The guard asked why he had come so late, and Verdun told him the tower master had ordered him to clean the treasure storage. The guard scolded him for being late and not getting prior permission. He allowed him in but sternly warned him not to cause any trouble. Verdun entered the room quietly. He placed his hand on a magical artifact to activate. Verdun confirmed to himself that he had successfully activated the sound-blocking device. He began executing his plan in complete secrecy. He walked steadily toward his goal. Powerful magic appeared before him as he prepared for the critical phase of his plan. Verdun began his plan by focusing on the magical artifact known as the Second Circle, a special staff that allows a mage to cast 3 spells at once and temporarily activates the wielder's latent talents. Its cost was extremely high. Verdun realized that executing his plan required obtaining this staff, and to do so, he had to disable the protective magic circle guarding it. That protective circle was of the 7th level, designed by the Tower Master himself, which made things even more complicated. Verdun remembered he had spent the past 7 years studying how to destroy that very magic circle. The Tower Master was so proud of, with all his strength and determination. He successfully destroyed the magic circle himself. Meanwhile, some of the mages in charge of guarding the tower's power source were lamenting their bad luck for having to work while others enjoyed the festival. One of them was complaining that if the selection were based on skill, he would have been chosen instead of being stuck there. Suddenly Verdun entered, and they immediately ordered him to bring them more drinks. The mages chatted among themselves about how hard it was to get the position of Tower Master and mocked the whole system. One joked that if the other ever became Tower Master, he would serve him drinks for free. The other took it seriously, and promised he would remind him of that promise when he did become the Tower Master. Suddenly, the Second Circle staff appeared in Verdun's hand before them, shocking them greatly, and he slashed one of their throats. The other mage asked in utter disbelief what Verdun was doing. Verdun advanced toward him with intense determination, holding the staff, which terrified and confused the mage. The mage screamed in shock, asking if Verdun had gone mad, but Verdun admitted these reactions were expected. The mage lashed out angrily, accusing Verdun of being just a weakling daring to attack a real mage. He cast a powerful 3rd-level spell at Verdun called Tidal Wave, challenging him to survive it. Despite the power of the spell, Verdun remained calm, repeating to himself a 3rd-level spell. Verdun responded swiftly with a counter spell called Earth Spear, effortlessly breaking the mage's attack. The mage was left in shock and disbelief, never expecting Verdun to actually use magic. He fell to the ground, screaming in intense pain. The injured mage asked in astonishment how Verdun, who had always been ranked as a level 1, could use such powerful magic. Verdun replied sarcastically, surprised by his shock as if someone like him could never use magic. Then, with a chilling calmness, Verdun added that this is what happens when people are underestimated too much, referring to both the mage and the entire tower. After that, Verdun stepped forward to see the tower's magical power source up close for the first time. He stopped before the power source, which appeared as a massive magical heart connected to a powerful and complex magic circle. Verdun stood before the magical power source, ready to execute the plan he had spent 7 full years preparing. He told himself that if he failed to use this energy, he had no idea what would happen to him. Mysterious glowing magical circles appeared on his back, preparing to unleash the spell that defied the laws of the sky. Verdun decided that if he didn't try now, he would never know the outcome of his efforts. He drove the magical staff into the ground, unleashing immense power. A giant magical circle glowing with energy surrounded him, while he stood firmly in its center. He cast his spell, Body Reconstruction, with tremendous force. Verdun shouted at the top of his lungs, "Sky Challenge," as energy surged violently around him. The energy explosion caused a bright intense light to appear, clearly visible from the top of the magic tower. The explosion's force reached toward the sky, sending a massive beam of light visible from afar. Some travelers in a nearby carriage noticed the huge explosion that lit up the sky, and the Tower Master clearly realized that this immense energy was coming from their own power source. The Tower Master erupted in fury, declaring that someone had broken into his magical tower. At the explosion site, buildings began to collapse, and the destruction was widespread. Verdun emerged with difficulty from beneath the rubble, coughing in pain. Despite his injuries and clear weakness, Verdun gripped the magical staff tightly and looked at his hand. He noticed the staff had vanished, and his power had shattered, but he realized he was still alive, which meant his experiment had succeeded. Verdun, with a trembling voice, confirmed that his experiment had indeed succeeded. Suddenly, he felt something strange, and noticed a powerful energy rushing toward him. Magical circles rapidly approached him, indicating someone was launching an attack. The Tower Master himself appeared before him, furious and brimming with magical power. Verdun wondered if the Tower Master had sensed what had happened to his men. The Tower Master extended his hand and unleashed a devastating magical attack at Verdun. The magical attack caused a massive explosion that brought about widespread destruction. When the dust settled, the Tower Master looked at the scene in surprise. He discovered a magical teleportation circle, and realized Verdun had used it to escape. The Tower Master's fury burned hotter than ever. He never expected anyone to dare tamper with his tower. He vowed that he would find the one responsible for this attack and kill them, no matter who they were, even if it was the Emperor himself or just a child. The Tower Master screamed in pure rage, promising vengeance, that he would find that person and kill them. The Tower Master let out a threatening scream into the air, vowing that the culprit would not escape punishment. Elsewhere, the atmosphere was calm and the sky clear, indicating a place entirely different. Verdun felt extremely drowsy and unable to move, wanting only to stay as he was. Suddenly Verdun heard the sound of water flowing nearby. He quickly jumped up in alarm as the water rushed toward him. Verdun wondered in confusion where he was, realizing he was supposed to be on the run. When Verdun looked into the water, he was shocked to discover that his appearance had completely changed. He was puzzled, wondering why he had suddenly transformed like this. He noticed that his brown hair had turned a light gray and his black eyes had become a clear blue. Verdun fearfully questioned whether he had become a completely different person, even though he believed the experiment had succeeded. He began recalling his memories, the success of his experiment, his defiance of the laws of the sky and his swift escape from the Tower Master using the teleportation circle. Verdun reassured himself that he had used magic to flee from the Tower Master and had ended up in this strange place. He looked around and realized he had arrived somewhere he had never seen before. Verdun noticed that the trees here were unlike any in the magical tower region of Bohemian, which meant he had transported himself very far away. He smiled with joy upon realizing he had successfully teleported almost halfway across the continent. Verdun felt immense happiness and screamed in freedom, knowing he had escaped the tower, using the pre-prepared magic circle. He sarcastically wondered what the Tower Master was feeling now and assured himself that the Master would be furious, especially since he wouldn't be able to identify him due to the destruction caused. Verdun realized that destroying the tower wouldn't be enough to end his master's influence, because the Master was known as the one capable of anything. But he decided it was enough for now, affirming that he would use this time to grow stronger while the tower was being rebuilt for the sake of his revenge. Verdun resolved to destroy everything the Tower Master had built to immortalize his name as a true mage and fulfill his vengeance. He confirmed to himself that this was his only goal, revenge and proving himself as a mage. With a confident smile, Verdun realized he would be saying goodbye to the magic tower for a long time. In a nearby forest, a goblin creature was chopping wood with an axe. Verdun used the spell Windcutter to quickly strike the goblin. The goblin fell to the ground after being hit by Verdun's spell. Verdun felt that using magic didn't feel much different than before. He wondered again if his only issue was his appearance and noticed that his current appearance hadn't changed his magical ability. He came to understand the difficulty of his current situation. The presence of goblins meant he was very far from the nearest village. Verdun noticed wheel tracks on the road and began to wonder what had happened here. He saw a box that had been left on the road and assumed its owners had abandoned it in a hurry. Verdun used the spell Mono Detection to try and locate the box's owner. He followed the trail of Mona from the box, heading toward the source of a loud noise coming from a distance. A man appeared, driving a carriage at high speed while shouting at his horses to run faster. The man was extremely angry and frustrated with his situation, wondering fearfully how things had ended up like this for him. He recalled that while passing through the forest, he had come across the remains of a group of bandits who were supposedly wiped out recently. The man tried to negotiate with the bandits, claiming he had connections with Baron Bath. But it didn't work. All his mercenaries fled in fear of death. The real problem began when suddenly, a terrifying orc with a strange smile appeared in front of him. The man felt a sense of relief when the orc began attacking the bandits instead of him, allowing him to escape. Still, he remained anxious that the orc might be chasing him. So he drove the carriage even faster. He began shouting at the horses to go faster, terrified of being followed. Suddenly, the carriage overturned due to excessive speed, and the man was thrown violently to the ground. He winced in pain, holding his back after falling from the carriage. As he tried to stand up, he suddenly sensed something strange around him. When he looked around in concern, he saw numerous goblins and orcs surrounding him. The man realized in despair that he was about to die because of the approaching monsters. The creatures charged toward him at great speed to attack. The man thought in sheer fear that everything was over now. But suddenly, high earthen walls rose around the man, shielding him from the monsters. Verdant appeared, standing atop the wall, admitting that he forgot to leave an opening for air. The monsters turned toward Verdant, angrily preparing to attack. Verdant decided to face the monsters and clean up the area before the man suffocated inside. He prepared himself for his first real battle since his transformation, aside from his earlier fight with the goblin. The largest orc charged toward Verdant, letting out a terrifying roar. Verdant began the confrontation with excitement, considering this a perfect opportunity to test his new abilities. Flames spread through the trees due to the magic Verdant unleashed. Verdant cast the spell multiple fire arrows to strike the surrounding monsters. The monsters screamed in pain and burned under the fiery assault. One of the large beasts charged at Verdant in a fit of rage. Verdant stood confidently on a high hill, ready to face the furious creature. He launched a dual attack using the spell's multiple fire arrows and strong wind simultaneously. Verdant declared the use of the dual casting technique to boost the power of his attack. He unleashed a powerful fire-based strike called Blazing Flame Arrow, which hit the monsters hard. The attack caused a massive explosion that wiped out most of the monsters in the area. The monsters screamed in agony, scattered across the ground after the devastating assault. Verdant was astonished by his newfound strength, remembering how in the past, he couldn't even defeat a single goblin. He looked around and realized there were no monsters left. Suddenly he remembered the man he had trapped inside the earth and wall and rushed to save him from suffocation. Out of nowhere, a remaining monster approached Verdant from behind, trying to attack him. Verdant noticed the danger just in time. He was shocked to see that one of the monsters was still alive and attempting to strike him. After the battle ended, a carriage moved quietly away from the scene. Inside it was a man named Mr. Conrad, who was extremely happy and thanked Verdant from the bottom of his heart, saying he would never forget this day. Mr. Conrad continued expressing his deep gratitude to Verdant, saying he wouldn't have survived without his help. Verdant told Mr. Conrad to focus on the road, so the carriage wouldn't flip over again. Mr. Conrad kept chattering, asking if Verdant had been hurt, but Verdant felt the man talk non-stop. Verdant recalled the danger he faced during the battle, admitting to himself that the situation had truly been dangerous. He remembered again how surprised he was that a monster had survived the powerful attack he had launched. At the moment, the creature attacked. Verdant quickly used the spell Windcutter to finish it off. After the threat was gone, Verdant relaxed with a smile and told himself there was nothing to worry about. Verdant asked Mr. Conrad if bandit attacks were common in this area, and Mr. Conrad replied that this was the first time such a thing had happened. He explained that the forest lies within Baron Witt's lands, and that he had been on good terms with the Baron since childhood. They had exchanged many letters, and the Baron had previously assured him the area was safe after the bandits were eliminated. Verdant sat inside the carriage, thinking to himself that he had hired cheap mercenaries, the kind he usually avoided, because of what had happened during his journey. He remembered that his magical teleportation had succeeded, even though he initially thought it had failed, and he realized that he needed to hide his identity and stay out of Bohemia Tower's sight for a while. Mr. Conrad asked Verdant if he could hear him, and Verdant realized he hadn't told him his name yet. Verdant decided to tell him his name was Verdant for now. But inwardly, he resolved to only use the name Verdant again, once he was strong enough to face the Tower Master, and instead told the man his name was Asher. The carriage finally arrived at the gates of Baron Witt's castle. Baron Witt welcomed his friend Conrad, commenting that he looked in worse shape than the last time they met. Conrad laughed sheepishly, saying he had lost weight from running away from an orc. Baron Witt expressed concern that Conrad might be injured, but they reassured him he was fine, and that no fault lay with him. The Baron learned that Asher was the young mage who had saved Conrad, and decided to host him in his castle, as thanks. Baron Witt instructed his attendants to invite Asher into the castle. Asher thanked Baron Witt for providing clothes, food, and a place to rest. Baron Witt welcomed Asher to his estate with a warm smile. He introduced himself as Witt Henlord, the ruler of this barony. They sat down to eat, and Baron Witt asked Asher what he thought of the food. Asher assured him it was very delicious. The Baron told him he had prepared a reward of 1 million gold coins for saving his friend Conrad. Baron Witt then offered Asher a new mission, promising generous compensation if he accepted it. Asher thought to himself that this was a good opportunity to earn money and improve his combat magic skills, so he asked for more details. The Baron began to explain that an incident occurred a few days ago in the southern forest, where hanging corpses were found. Villagers from a nearby village that had been completely destroyed. Baron Witt said he wanted the issue resolved before the departure of an important figure known as the Absolute. Asher felt this could be considered repayment for the hospitality he had received. Asher discussed the possibility that a mage might be among the bandits and asked the Baron when the mission would begin. The Baron smiled confidently as he responded to Asher's question. He told him the mission would begin in 4 days, and after 4 days a knight named Enoch, the leader of the mission, introduced himself to Asher and explained that he served under Baron Witt. Asher was introduced to the other team members, including a young man named Barak, who greeted him enthusiastically. Asher introduced himself to the team, saying he was pleased to meet them. Asher thought to himself in surprise about the situation. He hadn't expected that helping someone would lead to a dangerous mission involving bandits. Asher asked Captain Enoch if the people gathered here were all part of the team. And Enoch replied that they were a group of adventurers drawn by rumors of strange orc sightings. Enoch spoke about the large reward, saying that it was what had drawn even gold-ranked adventurers to join the mission. Verdun observed the adventurers, noting to himself that gold-class adventurers could rival regular knights in combat strength due to their use of internal energy and enhanced weapons. The mission team advanced cautiously into the forest, including 3 knights. But Verdun's presence was essential in case there was a mage among the bandits. Commander Enoch confirmed to Verdun, now known as Asher, that if there was a mage among the bandits, they would rely on him to confront them. Enoch explained to Asher that if the mage continued launching long-range attacks, even the knights would struggle to advance. He added that he hoped there wasn't a mage among them, to which Verdun calmly smiled and said that would be unfortunate. The team suddenly stopped when Asher detected a magic circle up ahead. Asher stepped forward and used the Dispel spell to eliminate the magic in the circle. A massive magic circle became clearly visible in the air after the previous illusionary one was dispelled. Everyone was shocked by the appearance of such a large magical formation within the region. Asher explained that the first circle was an illusion and this new one was a type of alarm. He asked everyone to step back while he completed the dispelling process. Asher completed the spell with force and successfully dispelled the circle entirely. The adventurers and knights expressed amazement at Asher's strength, wondering how he could destroy a magic circle so easily. Enoch felt that Asher had to be at least a second-tier mage. Verdun began thinking to himself about what it meant to be an adventurer, someone who roams the continent, taking on requests to defeat monsters or explore the unknown. Adventurers were respected despite constantly facing death, as fame and fortune followed those with the necessary skills. But when an adventurer grew too powerful and lost their honor, turning against humanity, they became nothing more than a dangerous bandit. Some of the bandits were grumbling about their poor situation and running out of food, feeling increasingly frustrated. One of them shouted angrily at his men to find food immediately. The night team approached the bandits cautiously and one of them asked Enoch what to do. Enoch suggested attacking right away since the bandits were unaware of their presence. But Asher asked Enoch to wait a little longer, pointing out they hadn't yet assessed the strength of the mage with the bandits. And there was a chance he could be stronger than Asher himself. Enoch remained uneasy, worried that if the bandits left their location, they would lose their chance to capture them. Asher pointed out that there was only one viable option at this point. The bandit leader spoke with his men, expressing frustration over the loss of their comrades and the lack of a clear plan. He voiced his despair about losing so many men and recalled how he had gone from adventurer to bandit in pursuit of money. The leader proposed attacking another village, but one of his men warned him that the Baron had previously been angered by the hanging corpses. One of the leader's men confirmed they were currently hiding under magical concealment and suggested moving soon toward a city called Martis. The leader finally decided to begin attacking the nearby villages. But the attack began suddenly, with fire spreading around the bandits, causing shock and confusion among them. A massive, unexpected explosion filled the area with flames and smoke. The bandits were stunned to realize the explosion wasn't natural. It was magic. They screamed in terror when they discovered they had walked into an ambush set by the knights, led by Enoch. The bandits tried to defend themselves quickly, but were hit with strong direct strikes. The mage Belson was severely injured in the surprise attack and collapsed to the ground, bleeding heavily. The bandit leader ran toward Belson, trying to help him while shouting his name. He quickly realized that the defensive mana barrier Belson had used had been shattered, which caused the severe injury. After evaluating the enemy's strength, Enoch declared that the situation was now completely under Asher's control and left the rest of the mission. Is it true that he is a good man? The bandit leader shouted angrily that the Baron clearly intended to kill them, particularly after hiring a mage. The leader fiercely challenged Enoch with his sword. Enoch and the bandit leader exchanged blows, and the bandit swore that he would send Enoch's head to the Baron as a message. Enoch said coldly, daring him to try if he could. Belson tried to flee the battle but struggled due to his severe wounds. He realized his pursuers had no ability to fly, giving him a moment of relief. But Asher challenged him with a swift attack using multiple ice arrows. Belson asked Asher if Asher was only trying to slow him down and decided to strike back with full force. Verdun responds powerfully with multiple fire arrows to counter the ice attack. The fire and ice spells collided with massive force, causing a massive explosion in the area. As dust and smoke cleared, the ground was revealed, scorched and damaged from the intensity of the clash. Belson stood with difficulty, fatigued, but told Asher he had chosen the wrong opponent. He explained that even though he was injured, he could still deal with Asher in escaping, especially since the knight Enoch wasn't with him. Asher responded calmly, affirming that he had no intention of letting him escape. Belson smirked mockingly, admitting that Asher had great confidence but insisted he wouldn't survive. He revealed his true face, and with a sinister smile, vowed that Asher will die today. How did Belson kill Asher in a third-tier spell? He shouted with all his power, "Die," while Asher prepared to counter the attack. A huge ice barrier formed around Verdun, attempting to trap him. Belson smiled confidently, believing that he had won the election. But suddenly the ice started to crack, stunning and shocking Belson with the unexpected result. The ice surrounding Asher began to crack. Belson was deeply shocked to see Verdun manage to block his falling ice spell without injury. Asher stood confidently, declaring he had used a third-tier spell called Earth's Fear. Asher shattered the ice completely, its shard all around him. How does a second-tier mage use third-tier magic? Asher responded calmly with mockery, asking Belson what he thought of him. Belson began to suspect Verdun wasn't just casting third-tier magic, but also using multiple elemental types. When Belson tried to launch another attack, Asher was faster and struck him with a decisive blow. Why did Belson collapse to the ground, completely defeated, while Asher stood beside him in victory? Asher said to himself that it was a good thing he joined this mission. He sarcastically thanked Belson, saying that thanks to him, he had learned the proper way to fight. Where? The orc wearing a distinctive pendant stood in a state of intense rage. That's it for today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome manhwa content.